Hey, what's up? I'm Dallas Wade, and welcome back to another worship service. Today we are going to be responding to the assertion that atheists, like myself, were brainwashed. I am an atheist, but I haven't always been. I was a Christian from the time of my birth all the way up until about the age of 18. Ever since I left Christianity, and especially since I've called myself an atheist, there are three accusations that I often receive from Christians that kind of go hand in hand. So I would like to address them here together in this video. Also, before we get started, if you aren't subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And hit the little bell icon while you're down there so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video.
You cannot resist. There is no other way.
Dallas Wade.
The first accusation is that I was brainwashed into atheism. Christians assume that I started reading atheist books, watching atheist videos, and listening to atheist scientists talk about evolution. And these Christians assume that all of that stuff brainwashed me into leaving Christianity and believing in atheism. The second accusation is that I am closed-minded to anything outside of atheism. Christians assume that after being brainwashed into atheism, I am no longer open to considering or even listening to ideas or arguments that contradict my atheistic worldview. They assume that I only surround myself with atheists, only listen to atheists, and only read material written by atheists. The third accusation is that I am just trying to fit in with the rest of the world. Christians assume that part of the reason I allowed myself to be brainwashed and part of the reason I am so closed-minded is because being a Christian in the world today is just too hard, too inconvenient, and too embarrassing. So they assume that I became an atheist because it's easier, because I can fit in with everyone else without having to suffer all of the persecution, discrimination, and public humiliation that comes along with being a Christian. I have received these assumptions and accusations from Christians not once, not twice, not even 100 times, but far more times than I could ever possibly keep up with. And where do you think these Christians got all of that information from? Where did they learn that I became brainwashed into atheism by studying evolution? Where did they learn that I am so closed-minded that I won't listen to anyone or talk to anyone who isn't an atheist? Where did they learn that I just want to be an atheist because being a Christian is too doggone hard and too freaking embarrassing? I'll let you guess where they got this information from. Was it A, they asked me and I just told them all of that stuff? Was it B, they heard it from someone else while gossiping about me? Was it C, that's what all the atheists are like in the PureFlix movies, so I must be too? Or was it D, they pulled it out of their anus? I'll give you a hint. It's not option A because none of those Christians ever asked me why I'm an atheist, and even if they did, I wouldn't have told them any of that stuff because guess what? None of it is true. I was not brainwashed into atheism. I had never read or watched or listened to anything from any atheists until long after I had already left Christianity. My journey away from Christianity and religion and theism started and ended with me studying Christian apologetics. When I was in my late teenage years, I decided that as a Christian, it wasn't just my responsibility to study the gospel, it was also my responsibility to spread the gospel, to evangelize, to proselytize. I realized, however, that in order to do that, in order to evangelize, I had to know more than just the contents within the Bible, which I was and still am very familiar with, but I realized that I also needed to know how to prove to non-believers and skeptics that the content within the Bible was true to begin with. Otherwise, why should they follow what the Bible has to say if I can't even give them a good reason to believe that what it says is true? And so that realization, that epiphany, is what motivated me to study Christian apologetics for the first time. When I did that, when I finally started studying Christian apologetics, it wasn't long before I was extremely disappointed and my faith was shaken. I had always assumed that there was tons of evidence and all sorts of irrefutable arguments to defend the Bible and the biblical God, but what I found instead was that the evidence was contrived and the arguments were disingenuous. And that's what led me away from Christianity and eventually to atheism. It wasn't atheists, it was Christian apologists. And it wasn't evolution, it was the Bible itself. And it wasn't a desire to leave Christianity, it was instead a desire to bring others to Christianity. Secondly, I am not closed-minded to anything outside of atheism. If I was going to insult myself or someone else who had left an ideology that they were devoted to all the way up until adulthood, the last thing I would accuse them of being is closed-minded. But despite that, Christians frequently accuse me of being closed-minded, and it just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. At the age of 16, I separated myself from my parents' denomination of Christianity. At the age of 17, I joined a different denomination. At the age of 18, I left Christianity, but I still believed in a higher power. At the age of 19, I became an atheist. At the age of 21, I became an anti-theist and an outspoken atheist. At the age of 24, I no longer considered myself to be an anti-theist, but I was still an outspoken atheist. And now, at the age of 25, I'm much more of an agnostic than an atheist, but I also don't worry too much about labels. That's been my spiritual journey so far. That's what I've been through over the last decade almost. My beliefs have changed a lot throughout the years, but never once did they change because I wanted them to. Never once did they change because someone else encouraged me to change them. And never once did they change because I was just following someone else. Every time my beliefs have changed, it was because I was studying my beliefs. First, I was studying biblical doctrine, and that's what led me away from my denomination. Then I was studying Christian apologetics, and that's what led me away from my religion. And then I was studying theology and philosophy, and that's what led me away from theism. And every single time my beliefs changed, it resulted in me losing the respect, the friendship, and the love of people that I deeply cared about. And every time my beliefs changed, it resulted in ridicule and slander and hatred from a lot of those same people. And every time my beliefs changed, I knew that would happen. I knew that if I left the denomination that almost every single person in my life was a part of, most of them would denounce me. And I knew sure as heck that if I left the religion that literally every single person in my life was a part of, almost all of them would denounce me. None of that was easy, and none of that was to my own benefit. But I've always been a very open-minded person, and I've always cared about believing whatever is true, no matter the consequences. That's why my beliefs have changed so much throughout the years, and not just my religious and theistic beliefs, but also my political beliefs and my beliefs concerning social issues. Whenever I am shown that something that I believe is demonstrably wrong, I don't dig my heels into the ground and swear on my mother's name that I will never let go of my beliefs. I abandon my beliefs because they are wrong. I know that I don't know everything. I know that I can be wrong, and I'm not too proud to admit that. I've been wrong a lot of times about a whole lot of things, and that's also why I will never turn down an opportunity to have a conversation with anyone, because they might know something that I don't know. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn something. Even just this year, I had a full-blown conversation with Ray Comfort, the banana man himself.
Dallas, I love you, and I appreciate you talking to me, and I wish you all the best. Give my love to your wife.
I will. I appreciate it.
God bless.
Yeah, you too.
God bless?
Yeah. I've also had great discussions with other Christian content creators like Robbie Lashua from Christ Culture and Coffee, Ross Burns from Burns Eye View, and Alpha from Alpha IV. And if I'm ever recommended a book or a podcast or an article, I try my best to check it out because that too can be an opportunity to learn something. So despite what Christians tend to assume, I do not exclusively talk to atheists and I do not exclusively consume atheist content. Most of the people that I talk to are theists, and most of the material that I read or listen to is also theistic, and that's not by accident and that's not by happenstance. That's intentional. That's by design. I'm already an atheist, and I'm already familiar with most of the arguments and evidence that atheists use to defend atheism or to criticize theism, so I don't really have much of a reason to constantly listen to atheists talking about atheism. And most importantly, I also just don't want to get comfortable inside of an echo chamber, which is really easy for people to do, and it's just not healthy. Don't surround yourself by people that believe like you believe. You need to listen to at least a good handful of rational people who believe differently from you. When Christians accuse me of being closed-minded, they are making the assumption that I want to be an atheist and that I am determined to always be an atheist, but that just isn't true. That's not accurate at all. I don't want to be an atheist. I just want to believe whatever is true about reality, whatever that truth happens to be. And as of this moment in time, I just haven't seen any evidence or seen any arguments that have compelled me to believe that any sort of theistic worldview is actually true. And so I'm an atheist by happenstance. But if one day I do discover some argument or some evidence that proves that there is some sort of a deity out there, I will gladly believe in whatever deity that happens to be. And if that deity, or that pantheon as it may be, belongs to some religion, I will join that religion. And that very well may happen one day. I'm open to it. I think it'd be pretty cool if it did happen. But I'm not going to believe in some deity or follow the ideology of some alleged deity without proof that that deity or that pantheon exists first. I am open-minded, but I am also skeptical. Lastly, I am not an atheist because I want to fit in with the rest of the world, or because I want to live a more convenient life, or because I want to avoid persecution, discrimination, and public humiliation. Christians who make these accusations are fabulously oblivious to the world that we are living in. Approximately 1/3 of the world's population is Christian, 31.4%. 70.6% of the United States population is Christian, and 86% of Alabama's, which is where I live. Christianity is the largest religion in the entire world, followed by Islam. 23.2% of the world's population is Muslim, 0.9% of the United States population, and significantly less than a percentage of Alabama's. Only an estimated 2.4% of the world's population identifies as atheist, 3.1% of the United States, and only 1% of Alabama's, which again is where I live. There are several studies which suggest that atheists are one of the least trusted and most disliked group of people in the entire world. One study performed in Canada suggests that people trust atheists less than they trust rapists. Another study performed by the University of British Columbia and the University of Oregon found that only 45% of Americans would be willing to vote for a qualified atheist presidential candidate, and more willing to vote for a female, a Jew, or an African American candidate. And if you know anything about the United States, you'll know that these groups also face a lot of discrimination and oppression. So it says a lot that more Americans would be willing to vote for any one of them over an atheist. There are more studies that show this pattern of distrust and discrimination against atheists, but you don't even have to look at a study to see how much the world, and especially America, hates atheists. Even popular and beloved celebrities are comfortable going on television and letting the entire world know how much they despise atheists. And do they get canceled for this? No, they don't. Does it make news headlines? No, it doesn't. People just laugh about it like it isn't an issue to discriminate against an entire group of people.
Does he have a relationship with God? You sitting up here talking to a dude and he tells you he's an atheist, you need to pack it up and go home. You know, you talking to a person who don't believe in God, what's his moral barometer? Where is it at? It's nowhere.
Speaking of God, you say in the book that you wouldn't go out with a woman. I guess a woman should not go out with a man who doesn't believe in God.
No, I mean, why would you?
Well, do you believe that only people who are religious are ethical and moral?
No, I just believe if you don't believe in God, then where's your moral barometer? That's just me talking.
I understand.
You can believe what you want to believe, but if you're an atheist, you're basing your goodness and morality on what? I mean, but what is an atheist? I don't really get into that. You know, when I've talked to people all the time, I'm an atheist. I just walk away. I don't know what to say to you. You know.
Well, an atheist is someone who doesn't quite believe that there is somebody out there, some God out there.
Well, then to me, you're an idiot.
Okay, well...
So I'm cool with that. I'm just probably not the right politically correct thing to say. But if you don't believe in God, I mean, really, you got to have an explanation for this. You just can't tell me this spun out of a gastrous ball.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then we were evolved from monkeys. Why we still got monkeys? It's too much open here. I just believe that. And if you don't believe that, then I don't like talking to you.
Former President George Bush Sr. went on record saying, "I don't know that atheists should be considered as patriots, nor should they be considered as citizens." When asked how important it is for presidential candidates to submit to Jesus Christ as King of the President, Senator Ted Cruz said that
any president who doesn't begin every day on his knees isn't fit to be commander-in-chief of this country.
Christians are the majority of our population. Christians are the majority of our public figures and celebrities. And Christians are the overwhelming majority of our politicians and lawmakers. And with that power, they are constantly and unapologetically discriminating against atheists and other non-Christians. And they are perpetually trying to make the United States a Christian nation. They want Christian prayer in public schools. They want Bible class in public schools. And they want Christian creationism in public schools. They want the 10 Commandments displayed at courthouses. They want Christian statues on government property. And they want the laws of this country to reflect biblical values. As if they haven't already forced their beliefs into the government enough already. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower and the Congress had the phrase "one nation under God" added to the Pledge of Allegiance. It didn't used to be there. And in 1956, guess who? President Dwight Eisenhower and the Congress had the words "In God We Trust" added to the United States currency. It also didn't used to be there. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. The state constitutions of 7 states prohibit atheists from holding public office. The state constitution of Arkansas says, "No person who denies the being of God shall hold any office in the civil departments of this state, nor be competent to testify as a witness in any court." The Constitution of Maryland says, "No religious test ought ever to be required as a qualification for any office of profit or trust in this state other than a declaration of belief in the existence of God." The Constitution of Mississippi says, "No person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office in this state." The Constitution of North Carolina says, "The following persons shall be disqualified for office. First, any person who shall deny the being of Almighty God." The Constitution of South Carolina says, "No person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office under this Constitution." The Constitution of Tennessee says, "No person who denies the being of God or a future state of rewards and punishment shall hold any office in the civil departments of this state." The Constitution of Texas says, "No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust in this state, nor shall anyone be excluded from holding office on account of his religious sentiments, provided he acknowledge the existence of a supreme being." But honestly, as bad as all of that is, it's still absolutely nothing compared to the discrimination that is prevalent on a social and professional level. In many fields and in many regions around the world, it is career suicide to make your atheism public, which is why a lot of people, including a lot of people that I know personally, don't do that. They're atheists, but they can't let that be public. Otherwise, it would cost them their job or even their entire career. And on a social level, I also know a lot of atheists that still go to church and still pretend to be Christians, because if anyone ever found out that they weren't Christians and that they were atheists, it could cost them their relationships with their parents, with their children, with their friends, or even their marriage. It's not fair that these people have to do that, but honestly, they're better off that way, which is why they're doing it. For people like myself who have been in similar situations to those and didn't keep our atheism private, the consequences have been traumatizing. Children are beaten by their Christian parents for questioning or rejecting Christianity. Teenagers are thrown out of their homes and disowned by their Christian parents for being atheists. Adults are excommunicated from their families and friends and entire social circles for being atheists. And on top of all of that, atheists habitually have their name names and reputations slandered and smeared by Christians simply for being atheists. And if you're outspoken about your beliefs as an atheist, it's not uncommon to receive death threats or threats of violence from Christian family members, Christian acquaintances, or just random Christians who run across your social media. And even if it's not you who are being targeted directly, Christians are constantly trying to slander and smear the reputations of all atheists, everyone who identifies as an atheist. If you have any outspoken Christians on Facebook, there's a good chance that they frequently share posts and memes that misrepresent atheists as evil or idiotic. And from time to time, you will probably see them sharing articles from Christian conspiracy blogs claiming that atheist elites are trying to take away our religious freedoms, which is ironic. If you ever watch God's Not Dead or any other garbage produced by PureFlix, you'll notice that they make atheists out to be evil, angry, and heartless villains who are trying to oppress the sweet and innocent Christians.
I'm Professor Radisson, and this is Philosophy 150. I would like to bypass senseless debate altogether and jump to the conclusion, which every sophomore is already aware of: there is no God. All that I require from each of you is that you fill in the papers I've just given you with 3 little words: God is dead.
At millions of churches, Bible classes, and Christian schools and colleges, this is how the leaders describe atheists to their students, to their members, and to their audiences.
Because he took everything away from me. Yes, I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
And as a result, tens of millions of people, and not just Christians, are led to believe that atheists are evil, immoral, apathetic, dangerous monsters who want to take away everyone's religious freedoms, destroy all of the church buildings, and force everyone to believe that God is dead.
God is dead.
Christians try to propagate the idea that they are persecuted, they are oppressed, and they are despised by the world, but they're not. Christians are the powers, Christians are the principalities, and Christians are the rulers of this world. They are not fighting against those things. They literally are those things. But so many Christians try to ignore this fact. So many Christians try to ignore reality, which is something that they do a lot of. And that's fine. If you want to ignore reality, that's fine. But just don't do it at my expense. Don't do it at the expense of demonizing minorities. If you want to make believe that the universe is 6,000 years old, and if you want to make believe that sloths swam across the Atlantic Ocean from Africa to South America after Noah's boat landed on a mountain in Turkey, that's fine. You can do that. That's fine. But don't make believe that atheists are evil, immoral, apathetic elites who are trying to oppress the sweet and innocent and helpless Christians, when in reality, it's almost entirely the other way around. For any Christian to accuse me of being an atheist just to fit in with the rest of the world, for any Christian to accuse me of being an atheist because it's more convenient and rewarding in the world today, for any Christian to accuse me of being an atheist just to avoid the discrimination, persecution, and public humiliation that comes along with being a Christian, that Christian is either incredibly dishonest or desperately naive. Atheists are brainwashed. Atheists are closed-minded. Atheists are only atheists because they want to fit in with the rest of the world. These 3 accusations from Christians not only go hand in hand because they are all 3 loosely related, and they not only go hand in hand because they are all 3 often used under the same breath, but they also all 3 go hand in hand because they are all 3 a projection of Christianity. Christians are brainwashed. Brainwashing, making someone believe something by repeatedly telling them that it is true and preventing any other information from reaching them. It's funny that when Christian adults who were raised in Christianity and have always been devout Christians independently choose to study science or history or religion itself and then leave Christianity because of what they've learned, Christians will accuse them of being brainwashed. But when Christian parents force their children to go to church 3 times a week, to join a Christian homeschool group, to go to Christian summer camp every year, force their children to study Christian history, Christian science, Christian literature, and even Christian math, force their children to only consume Christian media, only listen to Christian music, and only socialize with Christian children, force their children to pray before they go to bed, pray when they get out of bed, and pray before every meal, force their children to sing Christian songs, to recite Christian scripture, and memorize Christian doctrine, deprive and forbid their children from ever accessing non-Christian education, non-Christian media, or non-Christian friends, threaten to beat their children if they ever question the authority of the Bible, and specifically their parents' interpretation of the Bible, and tell their children that they will burn in hell for eternity if they ever so much as doubt what they've been taught, Christians don't consider that to be brainwashing. But when Muslims use those same tactics, they consider it to be brainwashing. When Hindu parents use those same tactics, they consider that to be brainwashing too. And if atheist parents were to ever use those same tactics, they would definitely consider that to be brainwashing. I've never seen atheist parents brainwash their children into atheism. Perhaps it's happened. Maybe it has. And if it has, I condemn it. But I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of Christian parents brainwash their children into Christianity. I was brainwashed into Christianity, as were most of my friends. Some of them have broken free from it, but most of them haven't, and they probably never will. Because brainwashing is extremely effective, especially when you start the process from day one, which is exactly what most Christians do. As soon as they're teaching their children that a cow says moo, they're also telling them that the Bible is the inspired word of God. And as soon as they're teaching their children that George Washington was the first president, they're also telling them that Noah built a boat and put all of the animals on it. And as soon as they're teaching their children that bumblebees will sting you if you touch them, they're also telling them that God will torture you in hell for all of eternity if you disobey the Bible. These children grow up and see that cows really do say moo, and that George Washington really was the first president, and that bumblebees actually do sting you when you touch them. So they assume that everything else their parents taught them must be true as well. In the minds of millions of Christians, the concept of heaven and hell is as deeply ingrained as the knowledge that cows say moo. If you want to brainwash someone, start as soon as their brains start to develop. That is brainwashing at its best, and Christians have perfected it. Christians are closed-minded. Another thing that's funny is when a Christian leaves Christianity after discovering some data or some information that they believe proves their beliefs to be wrong. And then other Christians who have always been Christians, accuse that Christian of being closed-minded. The Christian who just left Christianity. The person that was literally open to accepting the possibility that they could be wrong and literally did just that. Yeah, that's funny. Funny as in hypocritical. Christians are the most closed-minded group of people I have ever interacted with. And I've got a pretty good idea about Christians because I was raised by Christians, I was a Christian, and I have always been surrounded by Christians my entire life. I am intensely, erotically acquainted with Christian culture. And one of the pillars that Christian culture is built upon is closed-mindedness. It starts with the brainwashing, like we were talking about a second ago. The closed-minded Christian parents force their children to be Christians and closed-minded by only providing providing them with Christian education and Christian children to socialize with. That's why a lot of Christians homeschool their children, because they can control every person and every bit of information that comes into their children's lives. They can create an echo chamber, a bubble for their children to live in. But it's not just the Christian parents who are conditioning the children to be closed-minded. It's also the Christian leaders who are reminding the adults and the parents to remain closed-minded. I remember listening to many different sermons where the preachers would tell the congregation to not be unequally yoked with non-believers. And they would clarify that a non-believer wasn't just an atheist. It was anyone who didn't believe like our specific Christian denomination believed. I also remember going to a Christian summer camp, and one year the theme of the week that year was friendship. That seems pretty harmless, but it wasn't. The entire week was dedicated to the counselors, the preachers, reminding all 200, 300, however many kids were there, that we could only be friends with Christians. And not just any Christians, specifically Christians that were a part of our denomination. They were very, very clear about that. The justification used for all of those sermons and that week of Christian camp was that if we hung out with people, even just one person who didn't believe like we believed, we might start to doubt our beliefs, and we might start to believe what that person believes. Christian parents and Christian leaders also use that same line of reasoning to forbid their congregation or their children from studying any information that didn't align with Christianity or our specific doctrine of Christianity, which is why most Christians never have and never will study something like evolution unless they're listening to Ken Ham or Kent Hovind tell them that it's not true. And it's also why most Protestant Christians have never and will never visit a Catholic church or study Catholicism unless they're listening to their Protestant preacher tell them that Catholicism is not real Christianity. Christians are dangerously closed-minded. They will even go as far as throwing their teenage children out of their home if their teenager quits believing in Christianity, because they are so closed-minded that they won't let anyone who's not a Christian in their presence, even if it's their own child. As soon as people found out that I wasn't a Christian anymore, almost everyone unanimously excommunicated me. Every now and then, I'll see a friend in town, maybe at Walmart, and I'll wave at them. But a lot of the time, they just kind of look and they keep walking. I also don't get invited to my old Christian friends' weddings or parties or reunions. Every now and then, I even think about catching up with an old Christian friend, and then I find out that they've removed me or blocked me from their social media. But I know that these Christians are just doing what they were taught to do, because that's what I was taught to do. If someone leaves Christianity, it doesn't matter who they are, you're not supposed to associate with them anymore. But it's strange if you really think about it, because they should be doing the opposite of that. When I left Christianity, if my Christian friends really did believe in heaven and hell, they should have been reaching out to me to try to bring me back to Christianity to prevent me from burning in hell forever. But they didn't do that. Nobody did that. They all just cut me out of their lives and had nothing else to do with me, and most of them still haven't. If Christians really do believe in heaven and hell, they should be reaching out to non-believers, and they should definitely be reaching out to family and friends who have left Christianity. If you believe that someone is going to be tortured in hellfire for eternity, and you have the power to talk to that person and the potential to bring them back and save them, then you have the responsibility to do that.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
But most Christians don't do that. Most Christians don't talk to ex-Christians or non-Christians because a conversation is a two-way street, and they are too closed-minded to allow a non-Christian to talk to them. They would literally rather let a family member or an old friend burn in hell than let their beliefs be challenged. That is just about as closed-minded as you could possibly be. Christians are only Christians because they want to fit in with the rest of the world. The world is mostly Christian, and Christians do have the most power and influence and privilege in it, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that most Christians are only Christians because they want to fit in with the rest of the world. But I do think that probably has a lot to do with why most Christians never will question or even consider leaving Christianity, because it is easy and convenient and socially and financially beneficial. And when 86% of the people in your part of the world are Christians, it does kind of socially reinforce the idea that Christianity must be true, especially when the remaining 14% are too scared to speak up. When everyone around you is saying that something is true, it is kind of easy to just fall in line, especially when going against the beliefs of the overwhelming majority would only result in persecution, discrimination, and public humiliation. It is extremely discouraging, and it's a lot easier to just not bother with it. So yeah, in conclusion, all three of these accusations that atheists often receive from Christians are nothing more than a projection of Christianity from Christians. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was a long one, but I had a lot that I wanted to say, and I wanted to address these three subtopics in one cluster together. I felt like that was the best way to tackle these subjects, was to take them on together. And I'm really happy with how this video turned out. I put a lot of freaking sweat and tears into it. So if you liked this video, please click the like button, and I would really appreciate if you could share this video on your social media, and even possibly send this video to some of your other favorite atheist YouTubers. Help me get recognized a little bit. I would appreciate that a lot. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and make sure you click that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Hopefully it won't take as long to get the next one out as it did this one. This one took a while, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I also have a Patreon page where you can go and donate $1, $5, $10, however much you are willing and able to donate, and that will go to software and tools that I need to make these videos possible. I want to make a lot more videos in the future, and I want to keep them at this level of quality, and that does involve a little bit of finances. So if you are in the position where you can help me out, I would really appreciate that. So yeah, I don't want to keep you guys any longer. Thanks for everything. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys in the next worship service.